Hi, welcome back to the 50/50 Project, where every week I'll talk about one thing I've learned for each year I've lived. Today we're standing strong at number 2, and the plan is to count our way up from here to 50 over the course of the next year. And today I want to give you some fair warning that I'm having a little bit of an allergy throat thing, so if my voice is even more off-putting than usual, that is why. So last week we talked about a thing that fell into the making category, and this week we have an item from what I'm calling the stuff category. And I have to admit that I was initially a little surprised to see a whole category about managing and dealing with material things emerge in this list, because I guess I thought I was, loftier and more philosophical than that. But upon reflection, I guess it's really not that strange. Back in the introductory episode, I mentioned that I recently made a cross-country move, coming from a little cottage in North Georgia back up to Indianapolis. But I don't think I mentioned how long it actually took me between deciding that I wanted to move north and actually being able to make myself do it. During that interval, it became apparent to me that I was dragging my feet on this move because of some of the logistical horrors of the whole process, the packing, loading, transporting, and then unloading, unpacking of so much shit that I neither particularly needed nor particularly even liked. Looking back, it's kind of shocking to realize how many of my key decisions about my life have boiled down to whether or not I feel like moving 1,000 crockpots and books and sweaters and houseplants. My stuff was really an enormous factor in some of my most important choices, goading me to make, or more often not to make, changes that were really important to me. So somewhere on that path between Georgia and Indy, I decided that I never wanted to feel so trapped by stuff ever again, and I happened to stumble upon the minimalist movement at a moment when I really needed to think through all of this. I read a book called The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning that really made me think. I found a documentary on Netflix by two guys who just happened to call themselves the Minimalist, dabbled in some podcasts in the same vein, and ended up following a woman on social media who calls herself the Minimalist Mom. And the Minimalist Mom, in particular, helped me to rethink my whole situation by talking about stuff as inventory. And the thing about inventory is that we have to actively manage it. It's not just a pile of things sitting inertly in a corner or up on a shelf. You have to engage stuff. You have to dust it and clean around it. You have to keep it organized and stowed away. If you've got too much of it, you have to shuffle it around to access the other stuff that's under or behind it. There's an energy cost to that that's both physical and mental. And so thinking of stuff as something that continues to cost me in time or effort or money or attention, instead of something that cost me money only, one time only, that's helped me justify getting rid of things that I don't need or I don't want anymore. I'm a pretty frugal person by nature, and the idea of wasting money by getting rid of, quote, perfectly good stuff was kind of a big roadblock for me. But the idea of continuing to waste time and energy on an ongoing basis balances that out a little bit and frees me up somewhat. Now, I don't think I'd go so far as to say that I'm actually a minimalist in a strict sense. There are some people out there who are super serious about it in a way that I know I'll never be. So I think maybe I've just become sort of minimal-ish. I can still remember the outrage on my social media feeds, which are full of English majors and literature teachers, by the way, when Marie Kondo came out with this idea of keeping, I think, only 10 books. And I'm also a little scandalized by that thought. So I don't know that strict minimalism is for me, but still, wading through some of these ideas did help me get started in the process of divesting myself of things that were truly superfluous and genuinely unwanted and really weighing me down. So I purged a lot of my belongings in the lead up to the move. Most of it didn't faze me once I got some momentum going, although I do have to admit that getting rid of books was psychologically pretty tough at first. I didn't get rid of all of them, but I finally ended up donating probably about 2/3 of my pretty large library. It was tough some days, but it did get easier for me with every box and every trip over to the library's donation bin. And then there was the fact that on the other end of that journey, I purposely chose a new studio apartment that is tiny. I have just 505 square feet here in total. This is partly because I'm, again, pretty frugal or possibly cheap, and small means economical, but it's also kind of a first stab at tiny home living, which is something that has really fascinated me for a long time, so I'm sort of excited to dress rehearse that possibility. In the end, I decided to take with me only that which I could fit into a small crossover SUV. So no moving van, no trailers. I did ship a few boxes of books ahead of me, but that was it, besides what I could stuff in my car. And I've been happy with those choices. I have been just happier with less stuff and less space. Now that's me personally. That doesn't work for everybody and for very good, very legit reasons. Obviously, a lot of people just require more space and more stuff because they have more people to accommodate. And my situation was kind of unique. I had been in my previous home almost 9 years, and at that point, my inexpensive grad school era furnishings were coming to the end of their limited life cycle anyway. And the little house in Georgia was only about 900 square feet itself. So the downsizing was just less dramatic and less difficult for me than it might be to others for many reasons. And really, as an adult out on my own, I have never lived in a space much larger than that 900 square feet in Georgia. So I'm not trying to say that this approach would work for folks who are currently, occupying a 3,000 square foot family home. It wouldn't work for people with great quality heirloom furnishings or things like that either. But for me, in my particular circumstances, this was a good time to make a cleanish break with a lot of my things. And I also want to say that there's nothing wrong with just wanting and liking more stuff around you. One of the things I don't love about the minimalist movement is that it tends to be a little judgy, a little shamey toward people who just like to have more things in their milieu. But I think you can have a warm, cozy, minimalist-ish home with very little stuff in it. But you can also have a gorgeous maximalist home full of all kinds of treasures and collections that still feels ordered and intentional. I think it's really down to what works for you. And I'm not making any moral judgments here about which aesthetic is somehow better or worse. But for me personally, a little less has turned out to be more. And I'm surprised by how much I genuinely enjoy having less inventory to manage. And I'm amazed at how much easier it is to curate a little less space. I can deep clean and reset this place stem to stern in about an afternoon. And that's both because there's just less space to clean and less stuff to clean and clean around. And I'm finding that I really like that. But it would be dishonest if I didn't admit that the whole thing has sometimes put a kink in my tail when I really want to do some retail therapy, because I do like stuff and I like to buy it. But now I have to be very careful about what I buy because there are only so many places to put stuff here. So anyway, this whole experience has led me to a personal rule about what I bring into my orbit. So after way too much ado, we come to thing number 2. Do acquire, but don't accumulate. Acquire, don't accumulate. It's easy to say, but for me, it's been surprisingly hard to actually figure out how to do it. But again, just for me personally, I find that when I do the active, mindful work of choosing what I acquire, instead of just sort of passively and mindlessly allowing stuff to drift in and accumulate in my space and in my life, I do find that I feel happier. Early on in the process of paring down, I had to curate and cut my existing inventory. But then, once I'd done a good, thoughtful cull on all the old stuff, I had to switch my focus around to only bringing in new things intentionally and thoughtfully. It's easier, I think, to keep stuff out than it is to get them back out once they're in. There are outlays of money and time and effort that are attached to bringing new stuff in, and I found that those can work for me as kind of a speed bump in the purchase journey. If I have to go get the thing, haul it home, drag it up the steps, unbox it, maybe even put it together, and of course pay for it, all those expenditures of energy and cash, that tends to slow my roll a little bit. But wow, things have a way of just sort of sneaking in under the radar, and it happens so much more easily and more often than I think I ever realized before. So in the past few months, I have found a few tactics that help me stop accumulating on autopilot, which in turn allows me to save the space and the money I'll need to mindfully acquire things I actually want later. These are personal to me and they might not be of use to everybody, but I think I'll share them anyway. Okay, first tactic, go digital. I don't know if this has helped me to truly stop collecting certain kinds of things, but it has at least made my stores more portable and therefore less problematic in some ways. I did mention books earlier. I still have many physical books and probably always will, but I've been able to let go of many more and almost completely stop accumulating new paper and ink books because I've kicked my library over to ebooks. When I was thinning out my shelves in Georgia, it helped that a friend had already given me a Kindle for a previous Christmas, and this had already sort of conditioned me to engage with digital books. And now it's been a while since I've purchased a paper book for myself. Now, that said, there's always going to be some kinds of books that I personally want to have a physical copy of. I want it in paper and ink. And when I do that, I try to buy from a local bookseller to sort of offset the fact that all of my digital books are coming from a big, faceless conglomerate. I don't love that part of it, but it has really helped me to stop accumulating heavy, difficult to move pieces of inventory. So I'm still looking for a perfect solution there. In much the same vein, I forced myself to take all the paperwork I was holding in Georgia. We're talking about things like tax forms and work materials and even graded copies of some of my college essays that I wanted to keep for sentimental reasons, and I scanned all of it for storage on an external hard drive. In both cases, it's probably about a 90% solution. Do I still have too much data in whatever form? Yeah, I probably do. But now it takes up almost no physical space. You can move it all with one hand, and it solves a lot of the problems that I really feel compelled to solve. And I know some people are concerned about losing files or having your hard drive go obsolete and thus unreadable, or, having your Kindle account wiped out. And that's legit. That's something I was sort of fixated on too. But just for me personally, when I really think about what is on those files, there's nothing I probably can't either live without or replace somewhat easily if fate decides to intercede and take it. So with the exception of a few precious keepsakes that I will always keep in physical forms, it was worth the gamble for me to not have to carry 10 or 15 or 20 extra boxes of paper in the next move. So I'm glad I went digital. It has compacted and contained some categories of my accumulations, even if it hasn't totally eliminated them. Okay, next tactic. Beware the free stuff. One of the things that I found when I was purging in Georgia was a big plastic bag in the bathroom in my under-sink cabinet tucked away in a corner, and it was full of cosmetic and health and beauty samples. And most of them were Clinique or Estee Lauder or the like, which helped me to date them all the way back to the early aughts, probably around 2004. And the reason these things, I think, were sticky enough to make it through almost 20 years and at least 3 moves, unopened and expired and totally unnecessary, is one, because they were sort of fancy schmancy brands by my Midwestern standards. And I think it can be harder to toss out a lipstick that doesn't suit you if it's made by, Dior, than if it's made by Wet n Wild. But 2, they were there simply because they were free, because that's really how they snuck into my possession in the first place. In the past, when something was free, it never occurred to me to vet the item in the way that I would if I were paying even a nominal amount for it, even like a quarter. You don't look a cosmetic counter gift horse in the mouth, I guess. You don't ask if you need it or you like it or you'll use it, or at least I didn't. I just tended to pack rat it away into the shopping bag and then, keep it in my bathroom until death itself. It's kind of like the conference tote phenomenon. You remember that? As a former academic, whenever I went to a conference where I got a free or flimsy or ugly tote bag, there was no question really of whether to keep it. It was free. It was from a conference that charged me hundreds of dollars to attend, of course, but technically it was free. It was a trophy, a prize, a gift. Take it home and keep it forever and feel victorious about it, I guess. But these days, I try really hard to assess free stuff before it attaches itself to me at the point of origin. Just last week, I was offered a small tote bag of snack samples when I got my pickup order at the Kroger, and I actually said no thank you, and I sent it back into the store with the associate. And of course, I could have rooted through it and taken what I wanted to snack on and then, expeditiously, ruthlessly toss the rest of it. And I think a lot of people could probably do that very successfully. But I know me. And I know that if it comes home with me, there's a good chance that the little tote bag will get tucked away in some corner of the hall closet forever. And the snacks I don't really want might lodge themselves in a corner of an already crowded kitchen cabinet and slowly degrade there as I irritably shuffle them around behind and beside items I actually want to get in and out of that space. And because of all that potential rigmarole, I just didn't take the thing to a second location. I just left it at the store. So I try to be more skeptical of free stuff because it's really easy for a random item rather than a chosen thing to just become clutter for me. Okay, finally, tactic number 3. 1 in, 1 out-ish. So I try to practice a very loosey-goosey version of the 1 in, 1 out rule that you'll hear a lot about if you dig into minimalism at all. I'm not rigid about it though. It's not a strict 1-for-1 thing for me. And this is where the modest size of my living space comes in really handy because it's more about thinking about where something new would live. And if there's not a place for it now, asking what I'd be willing to jettison to make room for it. When you're forced to constantly conceive of your living space as really tangibly finite like that, this becomes a lot easier. Though to be honest, I don't know how well I'd do with this if I had an extra bedroom or a bigger set of cabinets or even another storage closet. But I don't, and sometimes I'm really grateful for that. Okay, moment of truth. Let's talk about execution score. I'm going to give myself a 7 out of 10 on acquiring instead of accumulating. I think I do pretty well with that, though that might just be because I'm in a season of life and a space where it's just really top of mind for me right now. I'd probably have to adjust that score if I found myself, suddenly rambling around a huge house with 26 closets or something. But I do think that I'd probably keep trying to interrogate the inventory I bring in, even to fill a bigger space. Because I think I've learned that I don't want an inventory that demands an outsized level of active management. And I only want my stuff to take up so much of my precious, ever-dwindling attention and energy. Okay, so I have other thoughts about material things, about both their physical bulk and their emotional weight, which will pop up later in the stuff category. But I think for now, that's just about it. Except to say again that I really don't think there's anything moral about having less stuff or about having more stuff. I just think that for me, the important thing is to be as tuned in as possible to how my stuff is making me feel and whether it's supporting or stifling the little life I want to be living right now here in this space. So that's enough for today. Full disclosure, I am probably going to go straight from here to the internet to shop for a little bookcase, though in my defense, I do have an unfinished corner of my apartment in which to intentionally, mindfully put the thing. So sort of both practicing what I preach and also blowing it completely out of the water, which, that's life itself, right? Okay, thanks for spending some time with me today. I'll be back next week with thing number 3 of 50.